Hi. No. Oh, no. What are you doing? High five. Good girl. Hey there, Abiding fam, and welcome back to my channel. It has been a minute. If you are new to my channel or this is the first video you're ever checking out, hi, hello. My name is Kelsey Lee, and here on my channel, we're all about helping you to explore your abiding creativity and to document a life full of abiding joy, faith, and love. And one of the ways I most love to explore my own creativity is through the art of hand lettering. It's obviously been a very useful skill for my creative journaling and my bullet journaling, and for just making a handmade card, for example, in a pinch, but it was exceptionally helpful in this most recent season of my life as I prepped for my wedding. In the time leading up to my wedding, I DIY'd a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean probably way too much. It was a little over the top, but it also was just so special to have so many really personal touches in my wedding. I plan to make a whole video devoted to the things that I DIY'd and crafted for my wedding and discussing them with you and a little bit of my process in creating them. So if you're interested in that, make sure that you are subscribed, join our Abiding fam, and of course hit that bell so you get notified when it comes out. But in this video, we are specifically going to focus on hand lettering and the hand-lettered signs that I created for my wedding. I created quite a few. This video is just going to show you 3, and throughout the process of creating those 3 different signs, I'm going to share with you some really great tips for hand lettering as well as creating signs and sign design. So let's jump into the footage creating those signs so that you can learn some helpful tips and hopefully be able to make your own DIY hand-lettered signs for your wedding or your home. Alright, so first things first is, of course, what are your tools? So you want to figure out what chalkboards you want to use or wooden signs. Whatever your base is going to be, you just want to make sure that it is smooth and easy to write on. And then you want to think about pencils because you do want to outline first to ensure that it's what you want before you put pen or marker down to the surface. In terms of what chalk markers and paint pens I like, I really enjoy the Arteza brand. This is not sponsored in any way, but I have found them to work the best. Also put some thought into whether you're going to use a paint pen or a chalk marker. Paint pens are going to be more permanent and so are good for things that are going to be outside or something you want to keep long term for your home. Whereas chalk markers are going to be much more forgiving in the creating process because you can erase it if you make a mistake, but that also means it could easily be erased during the event. So you want to keep all of that in mind when deciding which one is best for your particular sign. And lastly, you're going to want an eraser in order to erase all of the guidelines you're going to create, which is what I'm doing now. So you want to create guidelines with your pencils. So basically that's going to look like a top, bottom, and middle line, which in fancy hand lettering terms is known as your cap line, X line, and base line. Essentially, these lines are going to be your guide for deciding where your letters should end at the top and the bottom, and where the parts in the middle should land as well. So as you can see with this ampersand, I am aligned up with the lines for the top, bottom, and then the middle part of the ampersand. And you'll also notice that that is the first thing I drew out. So I always recommend start in the middle and then work your way out. That way you can ensure everything is centered if that's the look you're going for. So for this, I'm writing dinner and dancing with an ampersand in the center. So I'm starting with the ampersand as the centering point. If you have a word as your centering point or are just writing one word as your entire sign, then you want to count the letters to figure out what letter would be at the center. If it's an odd number, then that makes it really easy. If it's an even, then you just want to make sure that the space between those 2 center letters is at the center. The easiest way to figure this all out is just to use a scratch piece of paper to work out what is your spacing and what is the layout you want to go for. This way you can play around without messing up your sign. Once you get to the point where you're actually putting that chalk marker or paint pen down, you want to be really careful and just take your time with it. This took me a long time, and as you can see, I made mistakes, I smeared things, I had to erase and do it again because I didn't quite like the arc of a letter, for example, so just be patient with it. And then also remember that it's okay to do things a little differently than you would normally write. So in my case, I moved from right to left when writing out dancing, for example, because I'm a lefty and I know if I move from left to right, I'm going to slowly be erasing everything that I've already created. If you're a lefty, you understand that struggle. So be okay moving the board or sign around, doing things in a different fashion than is typical for just normal writing. That honestly is my biggest tip for hand lettering, guys, is that hand lettering is not the same thing as writing. The same rules do not apply. So now let's discuss the typical style that most people try to achieve when doing hand lettered signs like this, which is you want a more brush lettered calligraphy type look. This look essentially boils down to two things, which is thicker downstrokes and thinner upstrokes. That is essentially what creates the brush lettered look. So in order to create that in our signs, the first thing we want to consider is the spacing of our letters. We're going to need a little bit more space than we would normally put because we're going to end up having those thicker downstrokes. Since we're using chalk markers, we can't increase the thickness of our downstrokes by applying pressure the same way we can with a brush pen. And so the way that I create that calligraphy look is by faking it, essentially. So another way to say this is that I'm doing faux calligraphy. You can look up a lot of tutorials on how to do this, but essentially you just want to make all of your downstrokes thicker by adding an extra line and then filling it in. In my case, I'm filling it in with a striped pattern, but if you want to keep it more simple, you can just make it solid. The most fun part for me is all of the little touches at the very end once the actual lettering is done. I love to put in doodles and flourishes to bring the whole sign together and give it life. In this case, I'm drawing lavender because that was my main flower for the wedding, and so it's a nice tie-in to all of the other pieces I created for the wedding as well. And I'll also mention here that one of the reasons I love the Arteza chalk markers and recommended them is that they also have a huge variety of colors and metallics as well. So in this case, I'm using different colors from their metallic set, and I think it adds a really cool finish to the final product. So this is my finished dinner and dancing sign that I used at the wedding, and I thought it turned out really well. I have quite a few more tips for you guys though, so let's move in to our next sign. So our next sign is going to say all you need is love and a cupcake, and obviously this was for our cupcake table. So for this one, I wanted to have a little bit more fun with playing around with the layout and bringing in more doodles and features. So in this case, I'm drawing a banner, and then I'm also changing up the fonts and the sizes and playing around with putting more emphasis on keywords. This will help the viewer to know what they should be focusing on. Next, I decided to bring in stencils, which is a great tip if you're somebody who feels like doodling is a little bit beyond your skill set. Stencils is a way that you can still incorporate doodles and fun elements without having to do it completely on your own. So all I had to do was fill in the cupcake using my chalk markers and then peel it up to reveal a cute little cupcake that required very little skill on my part. Another really easy design you can incorporate is just doing very simple straight lines like I did on either side of and A. And I also did it at the bottom under Cupcake, which you'll see in a moment here. And it just really helps, I think, anchor all of the words and feel more cohesive and draw your eye down. And so that is something that, once again, looks very nice. It ties it all together, but it didn't take much effort. And there is the finished sign. I really love the way that this one turned out, but we're not done yet. We have one more sign to create and just a few more tips before we can send you off to create your own hand-lettered sign. So this next sign is really special to me because it is the sign that basically was a call to all of our friends and family to please highlight a verse in our Bible. I actually hand painted a Bible specifically for our wedding, and that will become our family Bible.
And I wanted everyone to share with us their favorite verse in the Bible. And so this sign is basically telling them to please do that. And so that is one of the great features of signs, is that they are a way of communicating information during an event in which you are not able to do so yourself. And the biggest tip I can offer you in the creation of this sign is to, yes, play around with different fonts, play around with different colors, but at the same time, keep it simple. Simple is more. Whenever you're switching up fonts and colors, I always recommend to keep it to 2 to 3. So maybe you do one solid print and then do a monoline cursive like I'm doing here. And yes, this is a great example of how I smear when doing left-handed from left to right in my hand lettering. Not good. But anyhow, you really want to just be aware of how you're changing things up, because if you do too much, say you use 6 different fonts and also do every letter as a different color, it's going to be too much and is going to overwhelm the eye. So you want to keep things very simple. A great way to learn how to do this is to look at signs that already exist. Walk through your favorite home store or craft store and pick out the elements in signs that you really enjoy looking at. Typically, you're going to find that those signs keep it simple. They stick to 1 or 2 fonts. They stick to 1 or 2 colors. In this case, I just made favorite verse a different font and love and Bible because I wanted those to be the keywords that stuck out. I also highlighted love and Bible by doing them in a different color. And then my extra design feature for this sign wasn't to do a doodle or a flourish, but instead to simply do a drop shadow, which really elevates the piece, but in a very understated way. And finally, guys, don't forget to erase your pencil marks. For a really polished look, you want to make sure that the only thing on there is the chalk marker or paint pen. A way I like to do this is to simply use a Q-tip with Windex, and that way I can really precisely pick out the pencil instead of the marker itself. And just like that, fam, you have a finished sign and are ready to show it off to the world.
Alright fam, I hope this video was helpful to you and that it inspired you to explore your abiding creativity by creating your own hand-lettered sign. Whether for your wedding or your home or creating a gift for somebody, it has so much more meaning and significance when you can look at it and say, I made that. So hopefully watching my process and hearing some of these tips will help bring you a little bit closer to being able to say, I made that when looking at your own sign. And this is a continuous message on my channel, but I say it with complete sincerity. Just remember to give yourself grace. Hand lettering is a skill and it takes time and lots of it to master. I've been practicing hand lettering for the past 3 years in my bullet journal, in my creative journal, in creating signs, continuously working on my hand lettering. And even so, these 3 signs for my wedding took me more like 3 hours than the 15 minutes that this video is. All that to say that hand lettering is hard, and you can't expect to start doing work like this when it's the first time you're picking up a paint pen. So just keep that in mind and give yourself a little bit of grace and keep practicing, and I promise you, you will see progress. And just enjoy the process. You're getting to explore your abiding creativity. You're getting to create something with your own 2 hands, and that's a beautiful thing. If you want more DIY hand lettering, journaling, and all of the creative activity videos, then please consider joining our abiding fam by hitting that subscribe button. We would love to have you. And to my existing family members, thank you so much for your continued support and your grace during this transition period as I'm adjusting to my newly married life. I really appreciate it. Even though the videos have been a little bit more sparse, I promise I'm not going anywhere. I have big plans for this channel and I can't wait to implement them and get back into the swing of things. So I hope you'll be there with me. Until then, guys, keep exploring your abiding creativity and document a life full of abiding joy, faith, and love.